again, and welcome to ManchTalk. I'm Tammy Simmons.
And I'm Carla Garrett.
And we almost went into the studio today.
Almost, but then I thought
we were this close. We could have gone in.
We could have, but I kind of like the idea of waiting until, we have the all clear to go have a cup of coffee like free people afterwards, because that's always been our ritual. And, I'd love to, both to emphasize to people back home how long this is going on, right? But then also, to be able to support, the small business owners in downtown Manchester.
Yep, so. I agree. So, and on a spoiled note, it is kind of, except for the fact when we have technical issues because Tammy forgets to put her speakers on, it is faster actually for us to do it this way. Crazy as it seems.
Really is, and although I look, very put together from the waist up, I do have pants on, but they are.
It does force me to get out of my day pajamas. I do get dressed every day, but I do throw on a sweatshirt and jeans or whatever because I'm usually working outdoors because I'm trying to take advantage of any dry day we have. But anyways, we got off. I agree. I don't want to get into all the details. Anybody can look on nheconomy.com to see what the permissions have been given to whom to open. But I guess retail could have opened starting yesterday. A lot aren't. I know like a little gift shop down in Derry that I go to, I think she's planning on Thursday. I'm guessing that people just have, like, they're not prepared. They've been home doing other things, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can open again, but I have to have, masks or whatever.
So, I was surprised in this morning's Union Leader on the front page. They talked about people lining up to go to the mall yesterday.
Who goes to the mall?
I see it as a point of pride. I've lived in New Hampshire for almost 13 years, and I have literally never been to a mall here. It's just not my jam. But kudos to the people for whom it is and who wanted to go and went and, supported businesses or just walked around. My hairdresser, as everyone can see, Carla very well, cut her bangs yesterday. We will live to regret that, but so be it. I posted on Facebook and she pinged me and she's like, I can fit you in next week.
Yeah, I've got like a lot of hair going on here. I haven't even attempted to try to figure that part out. I can trim my bangs to a degree.
Yes,
but I can't
much
do
like
anything.
how they say, if you're in a hole and you need to get out of a hole, stop digging.
Yeah.
Same is true with your bangs.
Yeah,
I was like,
when you think they need a little bit more, you should probably stop. Too funny. So I was trying to think of what was relevant to talk about today, because, that's what we do. So there's been quite a few articles in the paper in the past, week, I guess everything mushes together, about the school budget. So it's that time of year, it's school budget time, and I find myself getting incredibly frustrated because we own 2 properties in Manchester, so we pay, about $10,000, if not more, in taxes. And I know a lot of people, like all of my neighbors, my neighbors on both sides of me across the street, none of them have children in the schools. And it's not that I don't think, society has some sort of obligation to educate the community or any of that. But when you're talking about increasing budgets or prioritizing my tax dollars that are taken from me, whether I want them taken or not, maybe some of the things should be things that actually directly impact me as a taxpayer. So the one thing that is, I think we can quantitate in a way that people might understand, are paving of roads. You ask anybody, all you have to do is say, is there a road in your neighborhood that needs paving? And they all come back with, the roads are awful and the sidewalks are a disaster. And the sidewalks, quite honestly, in Manchester have been a disaster for more than a decade. But roads are bad. Everybody's got a road that they drive on regularly that they think, geez, this is just really bad. So should we be spending more money on, I'm going to pick on the schools just because they are disproportionately spending increases. We have a 14% decline in our student population, yet 15% increase in spending. You
And
don't have to be
not
real
only
smart to figure
that,
out that that doesn't make sense.
I mean, it doesn't make fiscal sense, and I don't think we have a true sense yet of maybe what the education landscape is going to look like
Right.
in New Hampshire going forward. I think that it'll be interesting to see, given this, massive pivot and this movement towards homeschooling or remote learning,
right.
and all of that, whether I anticipate actually that the enrollment will go down even farther than the 15%. So just so people understand back home, we are talking about increasing a budget by 15%, mm-hmm. while decreasing the people who need the services by 15%. So if that doesn't say to you, what's going on here? Right. What is that going for? What is it necessary for? Then, you're not asking the right questions. But to your point, I have a good friend who, actually a mutual friend, who's in a wheelchair, and we try and go out at least once a week to, hit up a trail, make sure, we're getting some sunshine and all that good stuff. And she's down on 2nd Street. And if you want to talk about bad roads and bad sidewalks, that stretch could certainly use a little tender love. And while we're all closed down, I don't understand why we haven't had massive amounts of crews out working on things that actually need to get done. If they want me to pay my taxes, which, as we all know, yeah. I am not super psyched about right now, then, I'd like to see a little bit of a return on my investment. If I'm paying to be enslaved, then can I get something I want out of this too?
Well, and that's where my brain is too. Just looking at one of these Union Leader articles, there's a bunch of comments from Mike Porter, who's the Ward 8 alderman. He's the one who says, the 14% reduction in student, 15% increase in expenditures. Now, just for this year's budget, and this is something else that people need to remember, that when we increase this year's budget by a certain amount, that just means next year's is automatically that much. And then they want to usually increase it that same amount again. So this isn't like one-time things. So by the time, some of the things in this article, they're looking at almost $2 million, $1.85 million to hire new staff to improve the structure of the school district. $1.85 million in new staff, not even raises for existing staff. And that'll include some school psychologists, human resource specialists, and English as second language teachers. First of all, no. I don't know how else to say. Then he's talking about, we look at the teacher's contract that was recently approved, which has significant raises, even though they don't sound significant when you say 1.5%. But when you look at the number, the district's cost for 1 year, for the school year starting 2021, which is the one that's coming up, is over $5 million because of that contract.
Because of, by the way, a pretty much secret contract that took years to get negotiated, which was passed in an emergency meeting that did not allow for public commentary under Joyce Craig's transparent leadership. So basically, Joyce Craig has given us contracts that the public have no say in. Hooverville 2.0 under the Muskeg Bridge, roads that are falling apart, at a minimum, if you're going to tell everyone to sit at home, could you convince me that I need your services or what you're doing?
Right. So quite a few, I asked Dan, just because I didn't want to be just randomly saying numbers. I don't remember what meeting it was at, but I remember a few years back, the highway department guy was discussing with the alderman the cost of redoing roads. Now, just for clarification, I don't recall if this was the cost for DPW to do it, if this was the cost for the contractor to do it, if this was resurfacing. repay, like there are a million little variables that could go into this. But at that time, the number that stuck in both Dan and I's head was that it was $1 million a mile. We could debate whether that's an appropriate number, whether that seems insane, but let's just go with it costs $1 million a mile to redo the roads.
With the caveat that that is in fact an insane amount, and I'm pretty sure if we had a free market in who would build the roads, it would be a lot cheaper.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't know. I know, like in our neck of the woods over here, Bedford just did Donald Street up to Market Basket, and then the side roads, because I think they were replacing the water lines there and everything. So Continental Paving was doing their paving. So I don't know. I don't know what the number is. I'm sure we could look it up, but for the sake of ease of math and just to make a point, let's say it's $1 million a mile. So I did some quick mapping this morning. Gold Street. I don't know about anybody else, but if you've driven from South Beach Street to Walmart on Gold Street, you are dodging huge potholes. It is an absolute mess. Just a mess. That's 0.6 miles. Donald Street over here, you've got nice shiny road in Bedford, and then you hit, the war zone down from the Bedford line to Milford Street. There's more than that, but let's just take that. That's another 0.3 of a mile. West Hancock Street, which is down in front of the 2nd Street lot, that's 0.3 miles. That stretch from Walgreens to Families in Transition is awful. 2nd Street, from Queen City to Granite Street, that stretch. Bodwell Road over on the east side from like Cohas Avenue down to Megan Drive is about a 1.1 mile stretch that has potholes everywhere. Candia Road under the 93 overpass, if you even just go from like St. Pius Church to Wendy's, I'm sure it needs more than that, but take that into consideration. And then just one west side, Dubuque Street between Amory and Kelly. Just those streets, just those little bits, not talking about all the peripheral streets. I'm sure there are endless streets that need paving. That's 3.5 miles of paving. So that's $3.5 million to do just those few roads this year alone. We don't have to do them every year. But instead of saying,
remind people back home, like this isn't a trade-off, right? Like it's not saying, hey, if we did these roads, the schools are going to become awful. No. Or like this, it's like everything that's coming from the school side is also like, hey, we just want these extra bells and whistles. And a question I have, and that I think people should genuinely start thinking about as we come out of this situation, is to analyze what that relationship is, right? Like, what are we paying for? What are we getting in return? Is this a fair trade-off? Should we maybe realign some interests? Should we be looking after the taxpayer maybe in a better way than we are right now? Maybe we shouldn't just be dictating, give us money, and just giving it to their cronies and all of that, right? So I do think that there are opportunities here. I have this radical notion that I just want to throw out there. I don't know that, the time is right or anything, but, I've been playing with this idea of my education, my choice, right? So this idea that the money should be allocated to the children, right? Because we're all claiming that the reason why we have this education structure, I personally think Claremont was wrong, but the New Hampshire Constitution does talk about cherishing education, and obviously you want smart citizens so that you don't end up in the situations we're in right now, quite frankly. So what if we had a pay-as-you-go system? I don't see why on my little street, I'm surrounded by 3 really awesome ladies. Their husbands have passed. They're paying, significant property taxes. Their children are all grown. Some of them didn't have children. So I'm like, why are they paying where they can barely, either, someone's getting a handout somewhere else, because, they have these obligations here or there. What if over time we just actually started to move to a model that is, you pay as you go, the money follows the child, so the child can decide and the parents can decide. The school works great, homeschooling is going to work, some kind of combination of remote learning. Like, I feel like there are some real opportunities, and I'm deeply disappointed actually by that Manchester Proud group that came out with this plan, which there are parts of it that I genuinely really like. They talk about magnet schools, which is just a fancy way of saying, okay, let's break the education monopoly in a different way. So sure, we can call it that if that's more palatable to everyone. But now you see they're just knuckling down and they're saying, well, these proposals were made in this Manchester Proud document, and we're just implementing them, which is where the 15% comes from, right? Oh, we need all this new staff and we need all this new stuff. And I think we should be thinking in way bolder ways. Like, let's not just keep trying to fix it on the ends or just make the budgets bigger and bigger. New Hampshire has an elderly population. People are on fixed incomes. We can't afford constant property tax increases. Please do not forget, if you're at home, your property taxes are going to go up this year, although you have been deemed non-essential and told to sit at home. So, I think all these questions should be asked, and the questions, we shouldn't just be trapped in this, well, this is the way we've always done it thing. Let's be like, wow, can we come up with cool new ideas? And I think a cool new idea is to say X amount of money is allocated to every child. That money is actually given to the parents, and they can decide. And what would be an advantage of that is actually that then you create stakeholders, the parents, who could say, hey, why have we hired 19 new staff members? Or, what am I getting in return for every time I'm paying more and more and more? Because currently the way it works is, because we've socialized the pain of the payment, right? Like, everyone carries a little bit, so no one except Carla possibly gets mad enough to be like, wait a second, what is happening? What's going on? But I think if we change that model, the parents will actually get a sense of engagement. And if we want to fix the problems in the state and in this country, we need smart people who are engaged. And so let's fix the roads, but let's also start to think about fixing things in exciting and bold new ways. Like, we don't have to, why are we still doing things the same way we did them 150 years ago? It doesn't make sense. Look at all the tech we have now. You and me talking to each other every week like this. People can teach like this. And also, there are brilliant teachers, right?
Really
so
are.
People can go and they can learn from the best teacher. Like, you don't have to settle. Just saying.
Well, so one thing I caught in this article, I was just browsing because I was like, why can't I put my finger on it? So you're talking about, you brought up a good point to make this juncture. So, this remote learning thing has shown us a lot of things. This has shown us that, some parents are going to tell you, I can't manage education for my own kids, like us. I just can't. I've tried this at home. It's just not going to work. There are going to be some people who would just prefer to put their kids in this public school and be done. There are a wide variety of options out there. Things certainly have changed. Technology should be changing everything in government, because technology changes things. It makes certain things significantly easier. The school superintendent, who Victoria will say she's very disappointed in, made this comment, which really kind of rubbed me the wrong way. He said, although our enrollment is dropping, we also have to remember that we have students that have a lot different needs than the Manchester of 10 or 15 years ago, and it is a much different world to reach them and provide the supports they need. I don't think his idea of change and my idea of change are the same. I do agree that the needs of students have changed. I don't think that they've become more burdensome, nor should they be more burdensome. I think we have taken on aspects of children's lives that quite honestly should be taken on by their families. Just in this whole scenario, and I'm not saying I want to starve kids or anything, but when we closed the schools, we continued to feed kids lunches via bus because people can't feed their own kids. I don't understand, why are they getting food stamps if they aren't feeding their kids? Because I thought that was the whole, reason for them thing. So we've got a superintendent who thinks that we have to have, they want to add a school psychologist, human resources specialist, and English as second language learners. I do not believe that we have more. 10 years ago, we had 68 languages being spoken in Manchester schools. I doubt it's any higher than that now. I don't think our population has become more diverse. I think it's about the same as it has been for the past decade. But he's wanting to spend, $1.85 million, which is 1.85 miles of road, instead on some positions, HR positions and school psychologists, or we could do 2nd Street and West Hancock and Donald Street and Gold Street and Candy Road. This is the reality. There is not an endless pool of money that there is, it's your tax bill, but I think we don't prioritize. I don't think we look, I don't know why it doesn't bother more people more often, that when they're paying $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $10,000 a year, they're not getting more for their money every year when those taxes go up. I don't get
more. Not only not getting more, but the thing is, it keeps going up. We don't get more for it. And then the trade-off is also, what could you, as a, free human being, be doing with that money? Yep. If I think if we frame things in a different way, right? So if we take Carla's radical notion of education and we put it in a different lens where we said, hey, wouldn't you like to have 50% more money a year, right? So let's say that if we did say the money followed the child, and I think my property taxes are close to $6-7 grand, right? So let's say I would still pay for city services. I would like my potholes filled. I'm glad someone picks up my trash. I still believe every one of those things could be done privately and cheaper. Government, there's an app for that, as I like to say. But, if you had, I think a way for people to look at it is not only, the way that people who don't like our positions frames things, right? Which is automatically like, oh, you hate children, you hate education, you hate, right? I'm like, I hate no one and I have no enemies. That's how I approach life, right? So I'm like, no, none of those things are true. So can we stop framing things with the wrong phrase? So then, let's get rid of that. So assuming no one's hating on anyone, then it's like, what's best for everyone? Because the problem we have now is that government has gotten so big and the unions are so strong, and the incentives, even with all this care money coming in, if you're talking about $1.25 billion, that's a lot of pennies that are going to start to be handed out. And that's a lot of people with their hands out. Now, there is maybe, I think, out of that, some portion seems to be being allocated to the actual taxpayers and to small businesses and all of that, right? But we know a lot of it is going to go to government employees to, be like, thank you for doing.
Well, we're already seeing that. Firefighters and police officers are getting $300 extra every week.
Oh, $300 extra on top of their normal enforcement. Do you remember 2 years ago when on top of their above market salaries for the work they do, plus the astronomically ridiculous benefits that people can get, which means that I will never be able to retire because I have to pay for someone else's pension so that they can stop working when they're 50. They've been getting danger pay and hazard pay for several years now that was based on the opioid crisis, a crisis, by the way, that we do not hear about anymore because it's not expedient. So for everyone who's back home, please also remember you are constantly being manipulated by the news cycle. And so this one was a big one. I mean, they hit us with the COVID whammy, right? I mean, it's impressive. You know, and the language that we're seeing now is also things like, well, this is just going to be the new normal. And Tammy, this should not be the new normal. This is abnormal. We should not stand for this. You know, all of this is nonsense. So they're going to be getting more of their payout. They're all going to get richer and richer and richer, while we are told we're non-essential and we're all going to get poorer and poorer. And there's a better way to do this that is honestly fundamentally fairer in the terms that they like to use, and more equal and what's the equimonious, whatever the word is, for everyone. And that approach is the free market that allows everyone to decide for themselves what works best for them. And we know if it works to make your iPhone and your Android cheaper and your LASIK, you know, eye surgery cheaper, and every time we get the government out of something, it gets better and cheaper. And we can do that with education. We just actually have to break this monopoly and say to people, there's a better way, and we can do it, and we shouldn't be scared. And the teachers who love to teach will still be able to teach. They'll have smaller classes. There'll be less red tape. It's all possible. People just have to believe it and do it and vote for the right people.
So on the normal mode, because we're running out of time, but I did want to say this. So there was also an article, which the word normal, it's true. Solid waste, the drop-off facility is returning to normal hours. But I want to remind people there is absolutely nothing normal about the hours that the drop-off facility are open. They're going back to their normal hours of Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 3, and the first and third Saturdays from 7:30 to 1. So if you think that normal and accommodating to all the taxpayers is every other Saturday, actually only 2 Saturdays a month, then you should probably rethink what normal actually is.
And lest we forget, all these people, not one city employee, not one city employee
everybody's being paid
or lost their jobs or did not get paid during this time, yet somehow nothing could be open to service the people they have punished.
And on that note, we're probably out of time. If you want to tell us about bad roads, email us at manchtalk@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook also. Otherwise, maybe next week we'll be in the studio. Enjoy that weather out there. Saturday's supposed to be dry and sunny, so get some yard work done, get out and take a walk. That's all I got.
And anyone who cares about Right to Know New Hampshire, we have our annual meeting. It'll be in Zoom on Saturday if anyone wants to join in. That's for open government advocates, people who believe in transparency will help us better govern. Please get involved. You can find out more at Right to Know New Hampshire online or on Facebook.
Awesome. That's all we got. Bye,
Thanks, guys.